Okay, so one more little quick video. I got my other one, which is over 2 hours long, people. I did that one last night, and I'm converting it over right now, okay? I'm going to upload that, right? And then I'm going to upload this, and then because I'm working in the house between up and down, in between different rooms, reorganizing, sorting things out, right? You know, finding old homeschooling things, right, that making me excited to do things with my grandchildren, and just, you know, whatever. Spring is coming, right? You know, I'm gonna have to start getting in the yard pretty soon. I'm gonna be going to the courthouse pretty soon, people. Find out how exactly I serve my government, which will be through registered mail, right? I just want to make sure, you know, it goes in the envelope correctly, and then I take it to the post office. I put it in registered mail, and then from there, when I show up to court, I already know what I'm gonna say, people. I'm bringing a whole bunch of fucking binders with me in a big freaking 2 pulley boxes. I'm going to look the judge straight in the eye, people, and I'm going to say, now, you see these? And I'm going to bring out those fucking binders like I did, people, when I was fighting for Andre, okay? When I was fighting for Andre, people, you know, there was a lot of shady shit that was going on in there, okay? And they had me come in for a case conference, right? And they wouldn't allow ShaMay to come in. Right? They wanted me in there by myself with no lawyer, nothing, right? Tried to say it was private, right? And that ShaMay was 17 years old or something like that, and that she wasn't old enough to come inside with me. So I had to go in there by myself. That's the time when that judge specifically told me to go get a lawyer, because I already had custody of Andre. But you see, that piece of paper that stated that fact was at the bottom of his file. And when I brought it to his attention, when I was in that courtroom with the social workers on that side with their lawyers, right? I think Ciera's lawyer was there, but I don't think Ciera was in there. I was in there, right? And I'm standing on the other side of the courthouse, you know, inside the courtroom, right, by myself, right? And I pulled out, people, the binders, like my what is it called? Evidence, I guess, right? Document evidence, right? And I had them all nice. You've seen them. If you've watched my videos long enough, you would see them, right? And I had them all laid out, right? On the edge, between the judge and the pews, right? In the back, right? I had his toys. I brought bells, because we were doing bells for Andre. Right? Well, this time, when I go, knowing what I know, and how they treated me with Uncle John, okay, I'm going to remind the judge that the evidence, the documents, is like so much that he can't expect me to know exactly what the court wants when it comes to all that evidence. Right? And just because he can dismiss the lawsuit doesn't mean that that evidence disappears and just simply goes away to never come back, right? It just adds more on to the problem until you have to deal with it, right? And that's what I'm going to tell him, people. I'm going to tell him. I'm going to say, look at all this evidence. This guy over here, David Eby, right? John Farnsworth, one of them. They have to appoint me a lawyer, people, if they're going to treat me like a fucking criminal and my family like criminals, okay? In a roundabout way, through their gang stalking, targeting of my family, covering up this, covering up that, protecting that corporation, right? Then to protect criminal activity as they're trying to point the fingers at me. Then I think I qualify for a fucking lawyer to figure out all those binders in terms of what will move things along versus being in a gridlock. Because we're in a gridlock right now, people. Well, I am in a gridlock, right? So I'm getting off track here, right? Because I'm listening to this stuff. Okay, what you're gonna see after this is Ontario, right? Doing the same thing that I've just been talking about for the last 2 days, in terms of they want to get as many people the needle in the arm, right? A nation of junkies, okay? They want as many people to jump onto that bandwagon, okay? by any means necessary, right? So, you know, before they follow the protocol of the companies in terms of within 3 weeks, you know, you do another dose when it comes to the mRNA analogs, right? I don't want to call them vaccines. I wanted to call them an experiment, but you know, okay, analogs, right? You know, but obviously premiers and health boards and gods are deciding to extend it to 4 months so they can reel in more people, right? Because that's what they're doing. They're reeling them in. Once they get you once, it's like that first hit of methamphetamine. Once you get that first hit of methamphetamine, especially if you're young and your brain is still developing, right? Or maybe you have a disability, or, right, you're vulnerable, right? You're poor, you know, gang activity, right? Like they target certain individuals in the community to become lifelong addicts to support the underground economy when it comes to drugs and prostitution and all the illegal organ harvesting, the whole 9 yards. Well, this is no different, people. It's going to take that first one dose, right? Poof, in the arm, to now get you going for the second, for the third, for the fourth, for the fifth, and so on and so on and so on and so on, because you're already addicted to that first idea of what you think you're going to get when you allow that shit to go inside your arm. Okay. I'm listening, and I'm like, okay, I know what these bastards have done. They've basically bought themselves 1 year. Because after you're done listening to, and this is what my video right now that is converting will bring to your attention, that after they give you a little carrot and pull it back, and then give you another little carrot to say, oh yeah, you know, you're going to hopefully be able to see your loved one soon because we're working on it and we know blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the sentence, when it's all said and done, they're saying they got a year to vaccinate everybody with this mixed match, modge podge of pilot projects, in other words, experiment, right? As they're data mining, getting prepared for the next wave of what we currently have. But if you really want to take it there, with what's coming in with the variants, pillar number 2, pillar number 3, pillar number 4, and so on and so on and so on, until you're just not around anymore to see it. Poof, you're gone. Nothing moves except you. Okay? And I'm like, for them, it's a cat in the bag. They got everybody on lockdown for another year, basically. Because when they're done with their spin doctoring through it all, with their give a little bit of hope, take away the hope just as fast as you're giving it away, they're also confirming at the end of the sentence, after they're done with their sentences, with the last sentence, they specifically say, it's going to be a year. We're looking at a year before we're supposedly supposed to go back to normal. Supposedly. As if people are remembering what normal used to be, because their brains are being rewired, right? They're hardwiring, they're rewiring the brain chemistry through that cortisol, okay? Which is a hormone that technically is supposed to protect the brain when it comes into dangerous situations, and it kicks in that fight or flight mode, right? And then once you get away from the danger, the brain relaxes, and then it goes on about its business, okay? Or if you fight, depending on which one you choose, through that, what's going on? Oh, let me run. You know, you go one or the other, right? Okay? Where we're at right now with the brain is we're always at that heightened state, okay? Because more than 3/4 of the population doesn't know what the hell is going on, right? And they're like internalizing this fear into the point where it's embedding itself into the actual DNA, which has been proven, people, that people who live in poverty, people who live in areas of violence and that kind of stuff, right? And that are being constantly bombarded with that cortisol because of fear and, you know, whatever. Their whole DNA begins to, I guess it's like an evolution. It adapts to that environment in order to be able to survive, okay? And, you know, it kind of goes back to the strongest, the fittest will survive, right? 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 It's usually the weak that die off first, right? So, through that process, because our brains never have a chance right now to heal themselves because we're constantly at that high level of cortisol, just with the psychological part of things that are going on. And then it trickles into the reality of, oh my God, I lost my job. How am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to pay my rent? How can I keep my car payment? You know, what about the hydro, right? Right? What about the credit cards? Right? Right? Okay? Or they're working, right? And, you know, they've been a faithful employee for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And they've, you know, built into pension plan and, you know, their life, they can afford their household budget based on their income. You know, they've done everything in the right way. And now they're finding that they're being caught up into the middle of something that if they don't conform to what's being dictated to them at a heightened state, right? At a heightened state, because everybody else around you is fucking paranoid too. So, you know, that even makes it worse, right? You know, they're faced with losing their jobs, blah, 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 right? If they don't conform to this, right? Needle in the arm. This political agenda to bring in chemistry into the body because it's so cheap to manufacture en masse. And it's easy to keep pumping it out based on, well, what we're going through. Suppositions, misinformation, you know, corruption, right? Right? You know, false information, right? People abusing their positions of power, outside influences through like cartels, whether they're connected to China or through the World Health Organization, are influencing what, you know, our sovereignty as a country in terms of protecting the people in the country first before protecting the interests of corporations outside of the country, right? Oh, yay, Canada, country. So they just bought themselves 1 year to ram home that first initial hit, banking on the fact that if you take the first hit, like as if it was a methamphetamine or smoking crack or whatever it is, there is a high probability, especially when you're dealing with vulnerable people that got cortisol going crazy in their fucking brains. They are going to find it's going to be like a fix for them people, right? And they're going to, oh, calm down. Calm down. Everything will work out. Yeah, I'm safe. Until they start hearing they need that second hit. Which, once they do the first hit, they're going to become like junkies for life. A large majority of them. Not all of them. Some of them might fight back, assuming that they survive and don't die first. Some of them might become really, really sick. It just will never be reported on. And because the families don't know how to reach out into the internet to get that information out there, nobody's going to hear about it, because we know if they come to my channel, nobody's going to be, you know, there's not too many coming to my channel because, you know, of all the shadow banning that goes on, right? And, you know, I swear, so that throws some people off to the side. But, you know, the thing about that, though, is just because a person swears doesn't mean that they're not intelligent, right? That's the first thing. And it doesn't mean that their mind isn't disciplined either, because they say, well, if you swear, your mind is not disciplined, right? It takes a disciplined mind not to swear. Well, yeah, you have a point. But when the cortisol has been going on for years and 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 years, and your body has evolved around that heightened state of anxiety and da-da-da-da-da, right? You know, right? And you're either, you know, it's not that you're in a flight mode as you are in a fight mode. Ask my kids, Mom, you're always fighting. Why don't you just relax and stop fighting? No, my brain is hardwired to fight back for justice, people. If it wasn't hardwired to fight back for justice, I would never have ever founded the nonprofit 20 years ago plus. Okay? You can't change a tiger's stripes, right? Right? You can't expect a cat to not have whiskers when the whiskers are naturally there to protect the cat, okay? Well, it's the same thing. So anyway, I see what the government's more than one is doing. I'm going to add in this little clip so you hear it for yourself. I want you to use your critical thinking skills, right? Because what Ontario is doing is no different than what BC is now doing, okay? And in essence, both those provinces in Canada, and along with every other province and territory, because we're dealing with a form of a cartel, okay? They're just in positions of power at taxpayers' expense, right? But outside of that, you know, those two provinces have basically bought themselves 1 year to continue to target, harass, intimidate, terrorize, and coerce, and a whole lot of loose harvesting, right, for the people of the province in order to be able to get that first hit into the arm, banking on the fact that with everybody's fucking head going crazy, the chances are of them becoming addicted to that first hit. Don't call it a dose. Call it a hit. Think of somebody sucking on a pipe, getting their first hit of methamphetamine, okay? Think of somebody sucking on a pipe, fucking getting their first hit on a pipe with crack cocaine. Think of somebody getting their first hit snorting a line of coke. Think of somebody getting their first hit taking some ecstasy that's been laced with fentanyl. Okay, this is your first hit, okay, to get people in that heightened state of vulnerability, right, to accept what's coming in the future. And they want to make sure that you understand that, so they're going to keep you on lockdown for another freaking fucking year. Sorry, they're going to keep you on lockdown for another year, okay? Just so that they can keep reeling in everyone. Everyone. Because out of everyone, there's going to be a huge majority that are going to be accepting of the second hit. And then it will be the third hit. And then it will be the fourth hit. And then that's when they'll remove the traditional vaccine and they will force you to take the mRNA vaccine because it's cheap to manufacture, okay? And because everybody's already on that roster, addicted to that process, right? Suffering from severe brain damage, it's a slam dunk for the government, people. For whatever these individuals are. Because they really are separate from the human race. Right? Okay? The technology is fueling it along, which is connected to AI, to which they're not telling you everything about. Okay? With an ulterior motive to bring in eugenics, right along with transhumanism at a slave state. Because if we weren't on that path, we wouldn't be having things dangled in front of us for another freaking year. As we see our loved ones becoming addicts to the propaganda, not to mention to the actual physical hit. Okay? And I know this from experience because I've seen it happen to my own daughter. All right? Right? This is no different. It's just on a grander scale. That's all. There was a reason why in 2002, 2003, 2004, there was a reason why, people. There was a sudden explosion of 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15-year-olds getting addicted to methamphetamine from that first hit, which was socially engineered to go into the heroin, into the methadone, now into the fentanyl, with the system in place to illegally harvest organs en masse based on the numbers of people dying directly from fentanyl alone every year. Okay? It was projected and they capitalized off it. Well, it's the same thing that they're doing right now. Okay? They're targeting the people knowing that there's going to be a large majority on that first hit, right? Under extreme trauma of the brain that's not only producing a whole lot of cortisol, but now you've got your little peanut in the back of your brain shriveling up little by little, creating a avenue for dementia to kick in 20 years from now from the brain damage that's occurring from lack of oxygen today. And being that it's going to take a year for the pushers in the community, right, to basically get their first hit, banking on the fact that, you know, many of them are going to come back for more and more and more and more and more and more and more because they won't feel good until they get it. Because they're being told they won't be feeling good until they get it. Because that cortisol will still be going on up there. So it's hard for them to differentiate. It's hard for them to discern. It's hard for them to figure out which one, what is up there is actually true and not true. Right? And because we're not allowed to socialize, right? You know, they're separated from the human aspect of being human. So they're going to be persuaded through the subliminal messaging that comes in through the internet and other outlets, and when it comes to information, right? I was going to say newspapers. We don't get newspapers anymore. Everything is pretty much on the internet. But just, you know, people's personal opinions and, you know, social media sites like Facebook, and then you get your fact checkers in there, and when they're not fact checking, they're coming in and spreading misinformation themselves with their own propaganda spin. And so anyway, I can see what they're doing, people, right? I want you to stop and think about it. If you think that by taking this analog or whatever the fuck it is that they want to give you with your first hit, that everything's going to go back to normal in a nice, timely manner, I can almost bet, I don't know, I have nothing to bet, but I can almost say that it's what it's going to do is it's going to drag out for another year, and then within another year, they're going to want to now continue on doing whatever it is that they've established because it's an income for them. And it provides a means to depopulate the planet without being held to account to the harm, injury, and or death that occurs from this process, right? And because people's brains are being psychologically damaged and physically damaged from a double whammy, and quite possibly through a third whammy with these jabs or whatever they want to call them, you know, you're getting hit 3 times on the head. Okay, I'm telling you, the brain can only handle so much. After a while, your eyes start to go, ringing begins in your ear, you get pressure all the time, right? You know, and if you mask that with more drugs, like with alcohol or prescription medicines and that kind of stuff, it's just going to make it worse, right? So go in with a clear head, all right? Just no matter how you feel, try and keep your head clear so that you can brave this storm. And when it comes time, I'm going to end it on this, okay? When it comes time for them to do whatever they think they're doing to you, I would advise that you expect and demand to have the insert in terms of what's written in regards to the ingredients of whatever it is that they're putting into your arm. You have your right to do that, people. You're not dealing with fucking street drug pushers here. Okay? A street drug pusher doesn't have to give a kid, right, or a young adult or anybody a pamphlet in terms of what's in the methamphetamine before they make their money on that methamphetamine. Okay? right? That's what makes the underground economy so special. There's no real paper trail there, right? Whereas this is supposedly government with professional protocols that have particular obligations to the public they supposedly represent. So in this case, I would highly recommend that before you allow them to give you that first hit, that you have exactly what it is in writing, where you can walk out the door with it in your pocket and put it into your paperwork and keep it in your files, right? In terms of what it was that they put into your system with that first hit, knowing that they're going to come back and tell you that you have to do it again and again and again. And you have to do it through a whole bunch of freaking brain fog, right? That feels kind of like a brain concussion, right? Because your head, again, is just going nuts with that cortisol as your little, right, in the back of your head is slowly but surely shriveling up, which we know will heighten the effects of dementia as the population ages. Okay? So make sure you get your documentation as to whatever it was that they're putting into your arm. That's a little bit of a safety net for you, right? Because if something happens to you, your family has a means to start to step up to the plate to fight for you. Okay? Right? Right? That's worst case scenario, right? If everything works out fine in a year from now, and everything's all honky-dory, well, you just keep it tucked away, because you don't know if this, whatever they're doing you today, after 5 years of continuing to do it, isn't going to have side effects like the side effects that my daughter went through, okay, at the cost of a negligent government that basically capitalized off the death of young people, okay? All right, so I'm going to leave it at that, and I want to try and just be happy, people. Do positive things. I'm trying really hard. So I don't know what my next video is. I need to not watch these guys for a while. I think we already know what's coming for the next year, okay? I mean, if there's something there that I think should be in the loop, obviously I'll talk about it. But, you know, as it is, I'm just going around in circles with my 26 viewers. Right?
Our primary care professionals, including those
March
family
5th,
doctors, are key to our success.
2021.
And you'll be able to get your vaccine at the right time through your public health unit,
Premier
through a mass
Ford
vaccination
provides
site,
an update
through your family
on
doctor, or through a local pharmacy.
at Queen's Park.
The details on all of that will be coming out province-wide in
This
the very
is
near
not
future. More
Doug Ford.
More mass vaccination clinics will open in the next weeks, particularly as the supply ramps up, and we're prepared to do it very quickly. And as I mentioned earlier, 113 clinics in the next several weeks, mass vaccination clinics in the next several weeks, will open in Ontario. The priorities will continue to be based on age and high risk. We want to look after those who are truly in the most vulnerable of circumstances. Our customer service desk and the online booking system, probably the most awaited system in the world right now, is already in soft launch, running a pilot with 6 public health units. It will be ready for March 15th, but meanwhile, vaccinations continue. And as I said earlier, we've already vaccinated 15,000 before lunch today. The 34 public health units, working with their partners in the hospitals and the primary care professionals, are crucial to us being able to roll out that vaccination program. While we've had to wait for the online system for Ontario, our public health units have not stood around and not reserved people to get their vaccines. They've had systems in place, either call centers or online booking systems themselves, or both, or they've gone out directly and communicated with those people and brought them in and gave them the
I changed the PSI speed on
the
this.
opportunity to get a vaccine when they had the vaccines there.
Okay.
And one of the things I would commend you is that when you do get an appointment,
What is the codex
to go
on
and get
this?
your vaccine shot, please do not show up 3 hours early. That's what we know.
YouTube
that people
just
are
gives
eager to
them
get
the
it. We know
standard
that they're
codex.
anxious to get it and make sure they don't miss their spot in line. But if you have an appointment, that means there's a vaccine reserved for you, and you will get it during that time frame. Show up 15 minutes early, please, because what happens is you end up standing outside, And then people see lines forming outside and get anxious about their appointment and show up even earlier. And that's obviously not what we want, particularly in this weather. The appointments are being made. AstraZeneca, obviously approved. This is a great vaccine. And I just quote to you the words of Dr. Robin Williams, who advises our team. And she said, you know, this reduces hospitalization and death in a huge way. And she said, it's a good vaccine. If we could get the flu vaccine to that level of efficiency, all the medical professionals would be doing cartwheels. They'd be so happy with it.
Wow.
It is a good vaccine.
If they could get the flu vaccine, because they know people are comparing this to the flu vaccine,
those from age 60
right? What makes this one so special,
next week,
right?
in participating
when they've been doing flu vaccines for years, and at best it might work at 60%, but it overstimulates the immune system, right? And then people become immune deficient, right? And more susceptible to other issues.
Family doctors and primary care professionals, and we will roll it out through those channels. More details will follow in the coming days as to which pharmacies and where you would go and how you would go and book with their systems. But the planning is now complete and the final preparations are being put in place. Johnson & Johnson, it provides an incredible opportunity for us and is truly the icing on the cake in this vaccination rollout. One needle with high efficacy, one dose. So ideally suited, we believe, and we'll walk through this and get it right, ideally suited for folks who are hard to get to sometimes for a second dose, maybe such as the important farm workers, many of whom are migrant, who guarantee our
They're
food
specifically
supply.
targeting
And on the
certain
other hand,
groups
perhaps the homeless
with
who
certain
get to once,
analogs
maybe not get back
or
to a second
so-called
time. Other
vaccines.
places, it is easy to
Okay.
store and ship, and is much
And it kind of
anticipated
falls
to
under
arrive in Ontario. We know it's approved, of
institutional
course. We just don't know when
institutional racism in terms of
The needle interval.
ethnic groups
This
and,
really has helped us have a
and
seismic
demographics
change
of
here and
groups
shift
in terms
this
of
past
farm
year.
workers. That's
The
a
change in
a
needle interval to up
demographic
to 4
group that
months is
tends
that
to lean
seismic shift.
towards a
And having
particular
4 months
ethnic
or
group,
up to 4 months
right?
between
And then
needles
there's the
means we can
classism, the rich
significantly
group
increase the
versus the
program
poor
and get a level
group,
of
right?
protection to the people
Then
of
they go
Ontario
by zip
that we
code,
want to get
right?
much
Then they
sooner
go
and
by
much greater
ethnic
numbers.
heritage within the
Promise to
country
take full
itself in
advantage
terms
this
of white,
opportunity
black,
to
and
protect our
brown.
people and to do it as fast as we possibly can. The aim now is to crush the numbers in the plan. And I know that Dr. Dirk Heyer this morning in the technical briefing talked about by the end of June, we should have enough vaccinations to get one needle in the arm of every person in Ontario who is eligible and wants the vaccine by the end of June. I want to actually challenge us even further, and I want to say by the first day of summer, we want to have vaccine supply dependent. We want to have a first needle in the arms of every person in Ontario.
See how they're pushing the needle in the arm, people?
And who wants to get it.
A nation of junkies. I'm not kidding.
We didn't have a
Okay.
single vaccine to work with, and now we have 4.
People are already getting the brain fog. You know, they're on the cusp of internal concussion, brain concussion, without falling on their head because of lack of oxygen, okay, to that hippocampus, right, in the part deep in the brain. I'm going to pull up something and I'm going to show you exactly where it is.
Have also been reached with the Ontario
Okay.
Medical Association and doctors.
And the effects of what's going on with these masks right now, some of them won't surface for another 20 years in individuals.
And additionally,
And it will come as symptoms of dementia, when in fact it's not dementia, people. It's brain damage that occurred 20 years in the past because of perhaps, and more than likely, wearing masks and depriving your brain and the rest of your body with oxygen.
With their occupational medical staff who can vaccinate
As you breathe in carbon dioxide mixed in with fabric preservatives and a whole bunch of different fucking bacteria.
Ladies and gentlemen,
It's like putting on a dish rag. Would you put a dish rag onto your face and walk around with a dish rag, breathing in the germs from a dish rag?
Almost 1 million needles.
Eventually, this mask with his nose dripping and his spittle going into the mask and whatever else, you know, he's got plaque on his teeth, right? Maybe a piece of food particle because he wolfed down a sandwich before he ran off to the podium to talk on about what he's talking about. You don't think that's not breeding bacteria and becoming like a fucking dish rag?
Anticipate the vaccine.
Would you put on a dish rag and walk around breathing that?
The vaccines are arriving in
stop and think about it, people. Use your critical thinking skills.
The vaccination clinic continues as fast as the vaccines can arrive, and we will be ready to get a vaccine into you sooner than you ever imagined possible in this coming weeks and several months. I'd like to see us be able to wrap this up for the first needle in our arms with that incredible level of protection by the first day of summer. In the interim, please, let's not let COVID-19 re-emerge, re-engage and tie down our societies again. Practice the health measures, practice the
Yeah,
social
well, don't
distancing,
forget, we
wear
got
a
pillar
mask,
number
wash your
2 coming
hands,
in with
and
2
stay
deaths in
separate
British
from people
Columbia,
that you
Canada,
should not
as
be
a
with.
comparison
And let's
to
get Ontario
who
with
else
this
is
bright
dying
light of the
under
vaccine
pillar number 1.
back to a normal life.
Right.
Let's get our families back to a normal life, and let's get the province of Ontario working again. Thank you.
We'll go to the phone line for questions. First question, please.
Your first question comes from Randy Ross with CHCH-TV. Please go
Pulls
ahead.
down his mask, takes a drink of water, and puts back his mask back on.
How, if
Right?
people between 60 and 64
Like, if this isn't paranoia at its height, I don't know what this is.
Efficacious AstraZeneca vaccine. And
This is the Premier
in
of
an area where
Ontario.
there will be a pilot project in the pharmacies. How do they go about getting that injection?
Randy, thank you for the question. This is for the first dose of AstraZeneca only in that pilot project, Randy.
It's
We
a
get
pilot project.
190,000 doses.
Okay,
That's
it's
a
an
relatively
experiment.
Small number for the slightly over
A pilot
million in
project
that group,
is
60
an
to 64.
experiment.
So the week after,
It's
when
just
we
a
get the
test
next shipment
run.
of AstraZeneca, or a week following that, we will open up more pharmacies across Ontario to eventually have the pharmacy chain right around Ontario working. So it's only because of that first shipment of 190,000 that we're doing it in a smaller area with up to 500 pharmacies. We'll enlarge that greatly and use that pharmacy channel, which has immense capacity to get the vaccines to the people of Ontario.
Well, of course, because they're going to make money doing it, people. They're not going to do it for free, I can tell you that right now.
Test zones next week. And also, once people are, everybody does have their first vaccine, and then we have to wait 4 months for the next second dose.
Not
What do
me.
you think will happen with the color coding in the various public health units? Will they all go to green, or will they still be in lockdown? Like, what will life look like after people have their first vaccine shot?
I think Dr. Williams would be the best to answer that.
Yes, well, I think that's one area that we are wanting to look at. Key in there is, of course, as the general has alluded to, as we go through and vaccinate, as we see or anticipate that the case counts start to drop, as our numbers drop, then of course the framework would be impacted accordingly in there. Now, I think the question you're asking for, are there certain parameters within the framework that we might want to adjust depending on if the levels of vaccination? We'd have to get up to a high percentage of coverage. So we are going to be reviewing this matter, but right now we are anticipating that if we continue to vaccinate, and we're going to see first impact on high-risk groups, seeing a reduction in mortality and morbidity, but then the overall population numbers with case counts dropping, that could impact what level of the framework you're in. So we're not planning to change the numbers and metrics in there, but we are going to be eagerly anticipating the impact of vaccination writ large, and that will have a major impact on the overall use of the framework. And ideally, if you have everybody vaccinated, you may not need a framework. I know the Premier would be interested in that as well. So this is all things ahead. We look forward to that, but we got a lot of work ahead of us. We're not there yet. We're going to have to hold the line for now, especially with variants of concerns that are escalating.
See?
And so we're going to have
Pillar
to be
number
really
2.
vigilant and diligent and following all the aspects that the general already alluded to with the personal protection. You got to do your part, no matter what frame you're in. Do it again, and do it consistently, and wait until your turn for the vaccination. It's coming.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Laura Stone with the Globe and Mail.
He didn't answer the question outside to say that nothing was going to change.
Basically, I wanted to just clarify something you said in your remarks regarding when you
listening.
Or hope all eligible adults will get their vaccine. Did you say you hope that happens at the beginning of July? You can just clarify that. And then also, the timeline presented here has moved up significantly. What you had previously said were the timelines for getting those over 60 vaccinated. Can you talk about what changed and what has sped that along?
Well, Laura, thank you for the question. What I want to do and be able to put as part of the plan, and we've been working towards it since we've heard that.
I don't know.
First that we're going to have AstraZeneca and then now Johnson & Johnson, but also a much increased flow of vaccines from across all 4 that have been approved
They're
up
just
till now. And so that's
trying
all
some
very
different
recent,
bait
obviously.
to reel
And
everybody
what that
in.
has allowed us to do is
Right,
do
in terms
a lot
of
the planning, and we'll complete
your
it in the
more
next couple of
traditional
days to
vaccine
actually
through
crunch those
AstraZeneca
timelines
and
really
Johnson &
tightly.
Johnson.
And our aim would
But
be
once
to
people
allow the
take
province of
those,
Ontario to have a first
right,
needle
Johnson
in
&
the arm of
Johnson is going to
every
fall off the
eligible
grid.
person who
Acronatas
wants
are
it
going to fall
by
off
the
the
first
grid,
day
and
of
they're going to
summer. That's
just
kind of the
really pump
challenge
hard
goal I put out there.
on that
The first day of summer,
mRNA
20
because
June,
that's where the big money is,
coming
people,
up,
because it's
obviously, and
cheap,
that's not
cheap,
very
cheap,
far
cheap,
away.
cheap,
So
cheap
when
to
I say,
manufacture.
please be patient
Okay?
a little while longer, we will get to you, and we'll get to you much more quickly than we ever imagined before. And what's changed is what I just said. 4 vaccines now versus the 2 that we had, and arriving in hundreds and hundreds of thousands per week, and millions in April, May, and June. And we're ramping up
Wow,
the
what a
system as
busy
those
company.
increases come in to make sure we can handle them and put them into the arms of the people of Ontario. So we'll get fairly quickly into early April into 100,000 a day across the province, and go upwards from there as we need.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Colin DeMello with CTV News. Please go ahead.
Hi there, good afternoon. We learned during the technical briefing that people who have an appointment for a second dose could be forced to rebook if the province extends the timeline.
See?
It's obviously going to be a bit of a challenge for seniors. Is this fair to them that the province is not going to honor their existing appointment for second doses?
I'll be glad to take it, Premier. Thank you for the question. We are going to honor our commitment for the second dose for those vaccines that require a second dose. It's just that now, as you heard from Dr. Williams and Dr. Hoyer this morning about the interval being extended, that's what we are going to do starting on the 10th of March. So over the next several days, there will be groups of people who will get their second dose because it's too late to cancel them or not cancel, postpone their appointment out to further in the spring or early summer. But as of 10 March, that's what we will start doing. And that allows us.
So they're basically giving themselves 1 year to jab everybody with the needle.
I always have
okay.
been, and here's what I understand.
Right.
And
That's their work. They've bought themselves 1 year.
Gives you an immense amount of protection, and the second one just adds a little bit in most cases to that protection, but acts as a booster to make it last longer. And so we know with those first,
but they don't know.
Needles particularly,
they don't know how long. He's
Pfizer
just
and
assuming.
Moderna, not just.
And the second one is supposed to.
Incredible level of protection, and allows us to perhaps mitigate a third wave, to protect people that otherwise would get COVID-19 or transmit it, and be able to do it so quickly as to be almost unbelievable, and that's what we want to do. So we will meet our commitment that the people of Ontario who take Pfizer, which is a 2-dose regime, AstraZeneca, 2-dose regime, and Moderna, that they will get their second needles. It'll just be an interval now up to 4 months.
Follow up?
So they're doing the same thing as BC.
Wasted yesterday, we had learned that so far 1,500 doses have been wasted in the province, and the health minister says
because the mission is more about
I'm wondering what
getting everybody to accept it
are you anticipating could go to
before
and
it being effective and safe.
First of all, any wastage we'd
and
like to see disappear
fully
completely. But look,
investigated in terms of being safe before they mass inoculate the public with a Mod Podge
doses a day,
of
you're dealing with 30-35,000
substances
that are wasted.
that
so say,
is being denied to the people that are, like, in terms of information, right? Everybody and anybody that gets a shot from wherever it comes from should have an insert as to what's inside that shot and should be able to walk away with that information in their pocket.
Every time the answer is 0. And when there is wastage, because there is, as you saw yesterday, it comes in a variety of ways. Number one, when you put a needle into the rubber cap that seals those vials, occasionally the particles in that rubber cap are pushed into the vaccine itself, and you can see them there because those specialists
Are you listening to this?
And then they discard that vial. They're not going to put that into
What about the particles you can't see?
Sometimes a vial shows up and it has a different coloration.
Oh, wow.
They discard that vial because they're not going to put it
I wanted to mention that. What if you get a contaminated shot?
Missed without question, because we did
or a spoiled one.
cc syringes to be able to draw the doses. And
you think they're going to tell you that what's sitting in the fridge is spoiled?
But now with the equipment in place, that continues. So let me just say, it's not because of carelessness. It's not because of leaving it out of the fridge, not because not having it in the freezer. It's because of the characteristics of the vaccine.
And they're all eyeballing it,
all I would say
right? They're not testing it, they're just eyeballing it. If you don't see rubber particles in it, therefore there must be no rubber particles, even though particles can be extremely, extremely, extremely small, right? Just like with their PCR test, right? They have to magnify something 40 times, 45 times, just to be able to see whatever it is that they're using as a means to ram in communism and basically destroy society, right? On a particle that's been magnified 45 times.
That is an
40 times, right? Well, how is a piece of rubber in one of these vials any more different? That's going to end up in your arm, floating around through your system. You want rubber from the freaking vial floating around in your bloods, in your blood, in your veins?
Yes, it is with these syringes getting the exact amount. These folks are heroes. I don't know how they did it. Matter of fact, I don't know how they kept it down to 0.2%. Just hour after hour, them putting these vaccines in the vials and into the syringes. Man, they're incredible. So thank you, everyone who's doing that. You're doing a great job, by the way.
Next question.
Can you imagine getting paid to fill up syringes for an 8-hour day?
Hey, Rob.
Hi, I guess this one would be for the general.
How would you feel at the end of the day of filling up syringes one after another, and that's all you did, like an assembly line? And that was your job description. How would you feel at the end of the day? Do you think they'd be tired?
Since it's so portable, will it be for mobile clinics going to the hot zones? Could you just give some other examples?
Hold on a minute.